When I bought the house at the edge of Westridge Lane, I thought I was finally free of noise, nonsense, and nosy neighbors. I wanted peace, a view, and space to breathe after 10 years in the city. The backyard sealed the deal, half an acre of sloped green tall grass near the fence line, and an ancient maple whose roots had cracked the stone path like veins through old marble. It was perfect, but it didn't take long before I felt it. Something wasn't right. At first it was small. My garden gnome, the quirky little statue left by the previous owner, faced west, when I remembered him facing east. A chair on the patio had been shifted. My watering can, which I always left under the spigot, turned up inside my shed. I chalked it up to memory slips. Or maybe the wind, or the neighborhood kids. Then came the Monday I left for work with my tools neatly arranged in the shedand. Came home to find the rake leaning against the garden wall, a fresh pile of leaves beside it. Had I done that? I started taking photos, quietly, subtly, before and after work. I didn't tell anyone, not even my brother, who had helped me move in, because part of me wondered if I was losing it. That is, until Tuesday. I came home early that day. My meeting had been canceled, and I pulled into the driveway by 2:30 p.m., ready to kick off my shoes and collapse. As I passed the kitchen window, I caught something out of the corner of my eye, a figure. I rushed outside and there she was. A woman, late 50s, perched on my patio lounger like it was a resort reservation. She had a book in one hand, sunglasses on, and a glass of what looked like lemonade on my table. She was lounging comfortably, like this happened all the time. "Excuse me?" I said, startled. She looked up casually. "Oh, I thought you were out till 5. Who ... are you?" She smiled like we were old friends. "Karen Hargrove. I live in the house behind you, red shutters. HOA block captain. Okay, but what are you doing in my backyard?" She chuckled. "Oh, don't worry. I'm not bothering anything. Just enjoying the light. Yours gets perfect sun in the afternoon. Mine's all shade by 2. That doesn't give you permission to just ... walk in." Her smile didn't flinch. Well, the gate wasn't locked, and I've always thought of this side of the neighborhood as more ... communal. We keep things friendly here. You'll see. I stared at her, baffled. Friendly. This was trespassing. Illegal? Even. Then she gathered her book, took another sip of my lemonade, and slipped out through a gap in the rear fences section, where 2 boards had warped just wide enough for someone to slide through. I hadn't noticed that before. False authority that night. I wrote a complaint to the HOA, attached a timeline, described the incident, requested that Karen be warned. The response came less than 12 hours later. "Dear Mr. Wolf, thank you for your message. HOA Captain Karen Hargrove was performing a landscaping compliance check related to outdoor furniture uniformity. Her temporary presence on your patio was not in violation of HOA code. Sincerely, HOA Compliance Board." They weren't just ignoring the trespass, they were justifying it. I felt something cold tighten in my chest. This wasn't oversight. This was coordinated. So I did what anyone would do when no one believes them. I installed cameras, 3 of them hidden. High-quality, motion-activated trail cams, 1 by the maple, 1 near the gate, and 1 disguised inside a fake birdhouse. Facing the patio. I waited. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, nothing. Day 3. I played back the footage. Karen returned, and she wasn't alone. 3 people entered through the back. 2 women, and a man, all carrying wine, snacks, and folding chairs. They set up like it was their weekend getaway. 1 even lit a candle on my patio table. This wasn't a slip-up. This was invasion. And from the way Karen led them in, like she'd done it 100 times, I knew ... This went deeper than I thought. I stared at the grainy camera footage for the 5th time. Karen wasn't just sneaking in, she was hosting. The man with her wore a golf cap, and one of the women had a clipboard, like she was taking notes. Meanwhile, Karen acted like a hostess giving a tour. She pointed to my flower beds, gestured toward my shed, even opened my patio storage box and pulled out my spare cushions like they were hers. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up reading HOA bylaws, city property codes, trespassing laws, anything that would give me leverage. Because if the HOA thought they could brush this off again, they had another thing coming. The next morning, I walked into the HOA office, camera flash drive in hand. The receptionist barely looked up. "Can I help you?" I handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, a polite but direct letter and timestamped screenshots of Karen's trespassing with guests. "Please ensure the board reviews this. I expect a formal response." She smiled stiffly. "The board is quite busy. We'll be in touch." I left knowing one thing. They wouldn't take me seriously unless I forced them to. A letter, a threat, and an audacious light. 2 days later, a letter arrived. "Dear Mr. Wolf, the board has reviewed your material and found no violation. The footage appears to capture HOA officers conducting informal property evaluations for future beautification grants. As per Clause 9A, all such site checks are permitted. Sincerely, HOA Compliance Board." What? Beautification grants? That wasn't a clause I'd read. Clause 9A. It only covered shared HOA property inspections, and my lot wasn't HOA land, it was private. They were bluffing. But more than that, They were covering for her. This wasn't just Karen. The HOA was in on it. A friendly face turns cold. I decided to visit the neighbor on the corner. Mr. Satterfield, retired lawyer, quiet, mowed his lawn with military precision. If anyone could confirm how far the HOA could reach, it was him. He opened the door cautiously, eyes narrowing when he saw me. "Hi, Mr. Satterfield. I just had a quick question about the HOA. I can't help you," he said curtly. "Just wondering, do you know anything about Clause 9A? They're claiming it allows. Don't get me involved." Then he shut the door. It was subtle, but I noticed something. Through the window, behind him, I caught a flash of red fabric. And a movement someone else inside. Karen. Why was everyone so afraid of her? Karen Escalets. That evening, I found something even more disturbing. My garden bed, my carefully planted. The strip of wildflowers had been torn up. The soil was fresh, flattened. Some of the plants were trampled, and a new metal stake had been driven into the ground with orange flag tape tied to the top. There was a plastic tag attached. Preliminary plot marking Phase 1, Phase 1. I yanked the stake out and stormed to the fence. Karen's lights were on. Her window facing my yard was open. I shouted her name. No answer, so I shouted again. This time she appeared. Calm, smirking, problem neighbor. "You, or someone dug up my flowers. What's Phase 1? She didn't blink. "That land may not be entirely yours. Property line shift. We're doing a title search. You can't just claim my backyard. If you're wrong," she said, tilting her head, "you'll have to remove those cameras. That's a violation too." She knew about the cameras. Someone tipped her off. And suddenly, I realized Karen wasn't just using my backyard. She might be trying to steal it. After Karen's smug warning about a title search, I didn't sleep. Again. Instead, I stayed up combing through my property paperwork, every document I'd signed when I bought the house 6 months ago. Everything seemed airtight. My backyard was fully within the boundary lines drawn in black ink on the plat map, and the deed clearly stated my parcel extended all the way to the back fence. But now I had a new fear. What if they were trying to change that? The next morning, I headed to the county clerk's office, where the real answers live, the ones that don't get redacted by HOAs, with fake clauses and smug letterheads. The woman at the desk, Angela, was surprisingly helpful when I explained. "I was researching a potential property dispute, Westridge Lane," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Oh yeah, there've been a lot of map pull requests from that area lately. Block 17. I froze. That was my block. Angela pulled out a set of maps, official dated, stamped hand, laid them on the table. One from 8 years ago, one from 3, and one from this year. I leaned in. That's when I saw it. The Shifton, the oldest map. My lot number 17B had a generous backyard. The lines were clear, hugging the slope all the way to the wooded fence line. 3 years ago, same thing, no changes. But the latest map, filed just 3 months before I moved in, was different. My backyard line had shrunk by about 15 feet, and that missing slice. It now showed as proposed common green space. I stared at the label. Heart pounding. Karen had filed for a rezone. I asked Angela, who submitted the changes. She frowned. "Looks like the request came from the Westridge HOA, signed by a Karen Hargrove. A fake claim and a real fee." I returned home with copies of every version. I laid them out on my dining table like a war map. So this was the plan. Her position on the HOA had submitted a false zoning adjustment, claiming a portion of my backyard as future green space. Once it was on paper, they acted like it was law. No notice, no warning. Just a slow, quiet land grab. And I'd almost missed it. That garden stake wasn't vandalism, it was a survey marker. And if I hadn't installed cameras, I never would have known. Another violation. That night, I reviewed my trail cam footage again, just in case. I found something new. Karen was back this time at night, flashlight in hand. She crept along the back fence, stopping at the stake I'd removed, and planting a new one. She also sprayed orange paint across part of my grass. A dotted line, like a boundary marker. But then came the most shocking part. She turned toward my shed, walked right up hand, tried the door. Thank God I kept it locked. She rattled the handle, looked over her shoulder, then retreated. But not before pulling out her phone and snapping a picture of the shed. Why the shed? A knock at the door the next morning. There was a knock at my front door. I expected Karen. It wasn't her. It was a man in a suit, holding a folder. "Good morning. I'm Rick Stabler, with Landsite Resolution Services. We're conducting a voluntary inspection related to an HOA-submitted boundary review." I didn't open the screen door. "This land isn't under HOA jurisdiction," I said. "And I haven't requested any inspection." He raised an eyebrow. "The HOA says otherwise. We have signed authorization." He held up a copy of the same altered map, only this one had something new written across it. Phase 2, shed demolition pending approval. My blood ran cold. They weren't just after the yard, they were after everything on it. I slammed the door, shut without another word, and locked it. Phase 2, shed demolition pending approval. They were planning to tear it down. For what? The shed wasn't fancy, just a solid, weatherproof structure that came with the property. It wasn't hurting anyone, unless it was hiding something. That thought hit me harder than I expected. I grabbed the keys and headed out to the shed, heart pounding. A hidden compartment. The shed was dusty, cluttered with tools, boxers from my last move, and leftover furniture. Barely used it since buying the place. I got down on my knees and tapped the wooden floorboards, hollow in the back left corner. That's when I saw it. A faint outline, an old trapdoor, sealed but not screwed in. I pried it open with a crowbar. Inside was a small, dry compartment, empty except for one thing, a rusted metal lockbox. I pulled it out and opened it with some effort. Inside, documents. Old property maps, a faded title deed, a notarized letter with a name I didn't recognize, Victor C. Bellamy, and one note in block letters, do not re-Simone, land grandfathered. Shed built before HOA existed. I stood there for a full minute. Karen wasn't trying to beautify the land. She wasn't even trying to expand HOA territory. She was trying to erase this evidence. This should end. The documents inside proved the land was legally mine and had protections against HOA claim. That meant their common green space. Rezoning was built on a lie. But why was Karen so desperate? An unexpected visitor. As I walked out of the shed, I nearly dropped the box when I saw someone standing by my back gate. It was Mr. Satterfield, the quiet neighbor who'd slammed the door on me a week ago. But now, he wasn't avoiding me. He looked tense, like he was breaking a rule just by being here. I saw the surveyors, and I know what they're doing, he said. Karen tried the same thing with me 2 years ago. My ears perked up. She said my side yard was unused space, and tried to claim it for the HOA's community trail expansion. I called it in, filed an injunction, quietly, but I didn't have proof. You do. I showed him the documents. From the box, his eyes widened. That's Bellamy's name, he muttered. Victor Bellamy owned nearly half this block before the HOA ever formed. Rumor was, he hid legal protections in the original deeds. Karen's been trying to scrub his name from the records for years. I suddenly understood. The shed wasn't just an old outbuilding. It was a threat to Karen's empire. Strike first. Defend loudly. I spent the rest of the day scanning every document in high resolution. Then I backed everything up cloud, USB, even printed duplicates. That night, I posted 3 signs on my property line: private property, cameras active, survey fraud being investigated. Then I walked over to Karen's house with one of the maps and the deed copy in hand. She opened the door, looking annoyed, until she saw what I was holding. Just so we're clear, I said calmly. This shed predates the HOA. Any further encroachment will be considered a targeted act of fraud, and I have enough to make this very public. She didn't speak, not a word, but her eyes, the flicker of panic, told me everything. For the first time, Karen was on the back foot, but I wasn't done yet, because if she went that far to get rid of one shed, what else had she been covering up? I woke up to a letter taped to my front door. This time, it was a full-page cease and desist from the Westridge HOAS legal team accusing me of harassment, trespassing on my own land, and unlawful surveillance of a board member. I laughed, out loud. Karen wasn't backing down. She was trying to flip the narrative. And now, she was using the HOA's legal resources to scare me off. Classic Karen, twist reality, play the victim, and hope no one looks too closely. Unfortunately for her, I had receipts, lots of them. I scanned the letter and forwarded it to a real estate attorney. I had quietly contacted 2 days earlier Marla Chu, a shark with a specialty in HOA abuse cases. Within the hour, she called me. I've seen this trick before. They're trying to create a paper trail that paints you as the aggressor, so they can justify the demolition permit. But your documents. That shed deed is solid gold. So is the footage. You've got them cornered. Exactly what I needed to hear. Karen rallies the board that same evening. The HOA called for an emergency board meeting open to homeowners. I showed up early, documents in hand. Karen was already there, flanked by 2 other board members who might as well have been mannequins with clipboards. One of them, the secretary, kept glancing nervously at me. This isn't about your shed, Karen said loudly before the meeting began. It's about maintaining our community's aesthetics and safety. I said nothing. 10 minutes in, they tried to pass a vote approving demolition of unauthorized structures encroaching on HOA common land. Karen's eyes flicked toward me as she raised her hand. 2 others followed. Then a voice broke through the silence. Hold it. This vote is invalid. Everyone turned. It was Mr. Satterfield holding up a folder. These documents prove that the shed is part of a protected parcel that predates the HOA charter. Any motion to demolish it is illegal under state law. And if this board proceeds, I'll join the owner in filing a class action lawsuit for fraud and misconduct. Karen paled. Her hand froze mid-air. Someone in the back clapped. Another homeowner muttered. About time someone stood up to her. The secretary lowered her hand. The vote failed. The HOA fractures after the meeting. Karen stormed out. I lingered just long enough to catch whispers. Half the room seemed to be buzzing about Karen's land deals, how she'd rezoned areas without proper votes, pressured neighbors to sell unused plots, even promised pool upgrades in exchange for silence. Turns out I wasn't the only one she'd messed with, but I might be the only one with hard proof. Back home, I checked my cameras again. One final surprise awaited me. Karen sneaking across the side of my house, ducked beneath the hedges. This time, she carried a spray cannon, started painting another orange line behind my fence. I watched, stunned, as she sprayed phase 3. Onto my lawn, she wasn't done. Even after everything, she was still trying. Time to burn her down metaphorically that night. I uploaded everything. Video footage of Karen trespassing, time-stamped photos of the garden, destruction, the illegal phase 1 and phase 2 markers audio from the HOA, meeting scans of the forged map, and real deed photos of the hidden lockbox. I sent it to every homeowner on our block using the community contact directory. Subject line: the truth about Karen's HOA power grab. Within 20 minutes, my phone lit up with calls and texts. Within an hour, someone posted it all to the Westridge Neighborhood Forum. By morning, Karen's name was being dragged through every online thread. And by evening, a much bigger threat was on the way, because now, the county zoning office wanted a word with her. The next day started with a knock at her door, not mine. From my living room window, I watched as 2 county zoning inspectors, along with a man in a beige suit holding a leather briefcase, stood stiffly at Karen's front steps. One had a clipboard, the other a camera. Karen opened the door in a bathrobe, visibly flustered. She tried her usual tactic, speaking over them, waving her hands, acting like she was the most important person on the block. It didn't work this time. They pushed past her and entered by noon. They had cordoned off her backyard. An orange tag was posted on her fence, pending investigation, unauthorized. Modifications to zoning map. I could almost hear the sound of her controls slipping through her fingers. The unraveling begins. Word spread fast. An anonymous account uploaded drone footage of her yard, highlighting the illegal alterations, fencing into green space, spray-painted plans, and storage structures that clearly violated her own HOA code. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Karen, the self-declared guardian of community standards, had turned her lot into a rule-breaking blueprint. Even worse, multiple neighbors came forward, saying Karen had convinced them to donate slivers of their backyards for future shared amenities, none of which ever got built. They trusted her. She used them. Now the HOA board was fractured. The treasurer resigned. The secretary issued a statement calling for an emergency leadership vote. Karen's empire was crumbling and fast. Still, I wasn't celebrating just yet, because Karen wasn't going quietly. The power flicked around 7 p.m. I was reviewing legal notes from my attorney when my house went dark. No warning, no flicker. Just black. Looked outside. Street lights on. Neighbor's porch lights glowing. Just me. I flipped the breakers. Nothing. Walked outside and stopped cold. A utility box near the back of my property was open, wires hanging out, and next to it, on the grass, Karen's scarf. I called the power company. They confirmed what I already suspected: tampering, possibly illegal. Then I checked the trail cam. There she was. 9 minutes before the blackout, Karen, hood up, gloves on, had crept around the side of my house, jimmied open the box, and done something before walking away fast. Now, it wasn't just HOA drama, it was criminal. Calling in the big guns. My attorney had warned me to document everything, and I uploaded the footage, contacted the police non-emergency line, and filed a report. They came out within the hour. The Officer Delgado, wasn't amused. This goes beyond a property dispute, he said. She's interfering with utilities. You could press charges, especially with video evidence. I agreed, but I also had another idea, one that would end this entire saga. Delgado gave me his card and said they'd be following up with Ms. Hargrove shortly. Music to my ears. The final stake in the ground. The next morning, I invited the local newspaper's real estate columnist, Jenna Park, to tour my property and hear the full story. She'd been following HOA overreach cases, and this was gold for her column. She walked the fence line, took photos of the shed, the documents, the utility box, the spray paint still visible on the lawn. This is one of the worst power grabs I've seen, she said, and you've documented it perfectly. She promised the story would run online by the end of the day, and it did. Headline: HOA president caught altering property lines and vandalizing utility boxes in suburban land. Grab. Karen's name was all over it, and with the whole town watching, there was only one place left for her to hide in. I was about to find it. By the following morning, Karen was nowhere to be found. Her house sat in eerie silence. No morning jog, no barking orders at the landscapers, her usual HOA patrol stroll. Gone. A delivery driver knocked 3 times before giving up. Her mailbox overflowed with notices. At first, I thought maybe she was hiding from the press. But then Officer Delgado knocked on my door again, with news that made the entire situation 10 times stranger. We tried to serve her this morning, he said, but she's not home. According to a neighbor, she left late last night with 2 bags and hasn't returned. Rand, I asked. He nodded grimly. Could be scared, could be trying to buy time. But you should know the county found forged signatures on some rezoning requests. Real ones, with witness statements. That meant charges, possibly even jail time. Still, something about the whole thing didn't sit right. Karen wasn't just a narcissist. She was obsessed. especially with that shed. What was she so desperate to bury? The whisper from the past later that afternoon. I received an email from a sender I didn't recognize. Subject line, Victor C. Bellamy's grandson. We need to talk. At first, I thought it was spam. Then I opened it. A man named Jonas Bellamy introduced himself as Victor's grandson. He said he saw the article about the shed online and recognized the name in the scanned documents. More importantly, he claimed he knew what was inside that shed before Karen ever tried to destroy it. We agreed to meet that evening. He was in his late 30s. Quiet but sure. The first thing he said when he saw the shed, that lockbox you found, that wasn't the only one. My pulse quickened. My grandfather knew people would come after his land, especially the HOA types. He hid 4 identical boxes in 4 properties he built. Yours was one. They each contained partial legal protections, but only one had the ledger. Ledger, I asked. A handwritten record of every transaction, bribe, and favor exchanged when this neighborhood was built, including mother's name. The missing ledger. Karen wasn't just trying to seize land. She was trying to erase a legacy, one that implicated her own family in shady land grabs, favoritism, and illegal rezoning. Jonas said the last time he'd seen the ledger, his grandfather hid it under a loose floorboard in the shed. I told him I'd searched, but maybe not thoroughly enough. Together, we tore back into the shed. This time, we lifted the heavy bench in the corner and pried open the baseboards, and there it was, wrapped in wax cloth, sealed in plastic, weathered, but intact. A small brown leather ledger, filled with tiny, furious handwriting. Names, dates, cash values, land plot numbers. At the very back was a name circled in red ink. K. Hargrove. Mother signed under duress. 1983. Why she really ran. Karen wasn't just worried about HOA politics. She was worried about this getting out. If this ledger made it to the press or a courtroom, it wouldn't just ruin her. It could unravel the entire Westridge HOA's foundation. Jonas took photos of every page. I scanned them to and then, just as we were finishing, Officer Delgado texted me again. We found Karen, trying to book a flight under an alias. She's in custody. I exhaled for the first time in days. The shed that stopped her, the very shed she tried to erase, had preserved the truth. Her illegal fence, the backyard trespassing, the utility sabotage. It was all a desperate scramble to bury her mother's sins, to hide a document that had survived decades. But now, everyone knew, and Karen, once the queen of Westridge, was going down. Not for garden violations or HOA overreach, but for generational corruption. The news hit the neighborhood like a bomb. HOA president arrested trying to flee after utility sabotage, and decades-old scandal resurface was the headline. Splashed across every local site and printed paper. Karen Hargrove, once the most feared, micromanaging force in our HOA, was now facing multiple charges, including falsifying signatures, destruction of property, and tampering with public utilities. But it was the ledger that truly brought her down. With Jonas Bellamy's family history and my documentation, the county launched a full-scale audit of the Westridge HOA's founding charter, and what they found was stunning. At least 6 property lines had been manipulated since the 1980s, favoring those who contributed to the founding board, Karen's family included. The vote that changed everything. The HOA board, now in shambles, scheduled an emergency vote. The question, should the Westridge HOA be dissolved and restructured from scratch? Neighbors who had lived in fear of Karen's letters, fines, and threats finally had their chance. The community center was packed, standing room only. I stood near the back. With Jonas, we watched as neighbor after neighbor took the mic and told their stories. She'll fine me $200 for having garden gnomes. She made my disabled son move his wheelchair ramps, said it was visually disruptive. I built a birdhouse, and she called it an unauthorized structure. When it was my turn, I kept it short. This all started when someone stepped 1 foot too far into my yard, but it ended with uncovering a history no one here deserved to inherit. The vote? Unanimous. The old HOA was out, and then someone nominated me to chair the transition board. I didn't expect it, but as I looked around at the hopeful faces, I realized something. I had already fought the battle. Might as well help rebuild from the ashes. I accepted Karen's final move before her arraignment. Karen was allowed to make a final statement, probably hoping for leniency. Instead, she delivered a bitter rant about how these people never appreciated structure, and good fences make good neighbors, before blaming everything on a generational misunderstanding. But her poker face cracked when the judge mentioned the ledger. She knew it was over. Karen was denied bail, justice, and something more. The shed, the little forgotten wooden box she tried to erase, was now a symbol of accountability. I didn't tear it down. Instead, I restored it, repainted the wood, reinforced the roof. Inside, I placed a glass-encased replica of the ledger pages, and I added a plaque outside. Sometimes, the smallest things protect the biggest truths. The neighbors started calling it the legacy shed. We even added a community garden around it. Funny how things change. A surprise letter weeks later. I received a handwritten letter with no return address. It was from Karen's younger sister, someone I'd never heard of. She wrote, "I'm sorry for what Karen did. Our family has always been split down the middle, those who hid and those who tried to fix things. You helped expose the truth. Thank you. She never would have listened to me, but maybe she'll listen to the silence now. Inside was an old black and white photo of their mother standing beside Victor Bellamy. It was marked, the beginning of the end. 1983, the neighborhood that watched me winnow when I swim in my backyard pool, plant tomatoes near the shed, or just sit under the restored trellis with a coffee. I do so freely, no cameras hidden in birdhouses, no trespassers whispering about shared space. Just Passan, the sound of neighbors waving instead of reporting. Karen tried to own the block with fear, but in the end, it was a camera, a shed, and the truth that reclaimed the land. And I didn't just protect my backyard. I took back the neighborhood.